All right, welcome to another episode of the Political Playbook. I'm Wyatt, and this is my co-host Darren. And today we've got a couple of different topics to cover. The first one we're going to talk about is going to be the Signal Gate, as they're calling it. Basically, here's what happened: the Trump administration wanted to airstrike the Houthis, which is a rebel group in Yemen, and they were discussing when, where, what time, do they delay it, and all that. And here was who was involved on this app or messenger app called Signal, which is a secure messaging app that they use for covert ops and basically like lower level unclassified settings, right? So they make a group chat. The guy who's in charge of this is Mike Walls. All right. So he makes a group chat with basically everyone except the president that is relevant to this matter, right? So you have just the short list is JD Vance, Pete Hegseth, Marco Rubio, Scott Bessent, Tulsi Gabbard, Susie Wiles, John Ratcliffe, Stephen Miller, and I think Steve Witkoff was there too. And these are all like the top security officials in the world on matters regarding the Middle East, warfare, treasury, whatnot. They made one little hiccup is the problem. They accidentally added a journalist. This journalist was the editor in chief of The Atlantic, Jeffrey Goldberg, and he was not supposed to be in there. So essentially, what happens is they're going back and forth texting without realizing that there is a journalist among them. Now, Jeffrey Goldberg claims that whenever all this was happening, he thought it was a joke. Maybe it was the Russians trying to do a misinformation campaign, so he didn't report on any of it. And then finally, the airstrikes happen, and he realizes, oh no, this is all real. So of course the story breaks and everything goes crazy. And at first, pretty much everyone, including all the people in that chat, just deny it. I mean, here's Pete Hegseth officially saying like there were no war plans involved in this group chat.
Why were those details shared on Signal, and how did you learn that a journalist was privy to the targets, the types of weapons used?
I've heard I was characterized. Nobody was texting war plans, and that's all I have to say about that.
Which of course turned out to be a complete lie. I mean, the whole group just started lying. Matter of fact, the next day, all of the top intelligence officials were testifying before Congress. All right, and Tulsi Gabbard lied, John Ratcliffe lied, like every one of these people lied, and we couldn't prove it at the time because Goldberg had released the receipts. And so after basically getting upset that everyone was calling him a liar and saying that he made all this up and there are no sources or anything, he finally just decided to release pretty much everything. The only thing he didn't release is that there was an undercover agent uh, in Yemen that they did not want to compromise in any way, even though they're likely compromised now. I mean, who knows, right? But that's essentially the story: is that they were using an app that they should have been using, talking about stuff that they should have been talking about, and they added, I guess, they added a journalist, not on purpose. They didn't mean to. So I guess we're just lucky that they didn't add the Chinese ambassador, the Russian ambassador, a Houthi, a journalist who's like got malicious intent. Like, I mean, Darren, like, you just talk to me about the absurdity of this story, right? Like, this is just blatant. At the best case scenario is negligence, right? Like,
Yeah, well, the incompetence is certainly striking. I mean, you just know if it were anyone on a lower rung, like some lower level staffer that had somehow, put a journalist in this chat that, heck, they might even be, facing, criminal charges. Who knows? Just severe negligence. However, I don't think anything is going to happen to Mike Waltz. It seems as though Trump is reluctant to, admonish him in any way or let any, fire him. He would see, I guess he sees that as, playing into the left's hands somehow. I think he should punish
well, this
or
is
fire Mike Waltz, honestly, and then
Yeah,
But
this
what were you
is
gonna
this
say?
is what's really striking to me because I feel like a first term Trump, I think he's lost his edge basically. Because
Oh
like
yeah.
during his first term, this guy would have already been gone, in my opinion. Like this guy, Trump would have been like, "Sorry, you embarrassed the administration. You're giving us too much bad press. Get out." You know?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, he fired quite a few people in his first term, so maybe in his age he's become a bit of a softy. And to your point, maybe I need to reevaluate the likelihood of him ousting Elon. As I hypothesized he would eventually, but maybe not. If he's going to be this soft on Mike Waltz, I mean, what other screw ups will he tolerate? Who knows? But
Right.
with all that conjecture being said, that's a little off the point. I just don't know how something like this happens. Like, obviously, this Jeffrey Goldberg guy must have been in Mike Waltz's contacts. But Mike Waltz is not a fan. Not Mike Waltz. Jeffrey Goldberg is kind of oppositional to Trump.
Right.
So I don't know. Why. They're they're I guess they correspond enough to where he could mistakenly put
Yeah.
his
Mike Walls is claiming that he's never met Jeffrey Goldberg, and Jeffrey Goldberg is running around like, well, that's obviously not true. Like, there's pictures of us together, there's videos of us
yeah
chatting. He's like, I don't know why this guy is acting like he never met me. You know what you know what I mean?
yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. I did see Crystal and Sagar, or not, maybe no, it wasn't Crystal and Sagar. It was Crystal, or sorry, Sagar and Grimm. They were talking about how they think Jeffrey Goldberg was like basically a leak for Walls, you know?
It could be. It could be. But what would like oh wait, are you speculating that Mike Waltz intentionally did it?
No, God, no. No, I don't know. No. I think that this is pure incompetence. This is no, none of this was I actually don't agree that Jeffrey Goldberg is a leak for Mike Walls. I'm just saying that that's what I've heard people say that they think that this was done on purpose or like this was like a hack to try and mess with the Trump administration. Like none of that makes any sense to me.
Yeah, I have to agree. I can't see how it could ever be intentional because what would Mike Waltz gain? I mean, if anything, this has just been such an embarrassment for him. I'm really, back to our earlier point, I'm surprised he still has a job. So,
He should be fired. He absolutely should be fired. But
oh yeah, it's a national embarrassment. I don't know why Trump is being
forget
so lenient.
forget embarrassment, brother. It's a security risk. You know what I mean? Like how and the message you're sending to people is that this isn't that big of a deal, right? And I
yeah.
and I think listen, it's just a fact. Like if a lower level service member would have done this, they would have not only been discharged, they would have been potentially thrown in prison for, this. Like, right?
Oh
If
yeah.
if I just can't understand this. And then let's start with this. Why on earth are they using Signal, right? Cuz Signal so it's basically a more secure version of like WhatsApp, Discord, Messenger, stuff like that, right? But it's not even designed to be secure enough for like highly classified top secret materials, right? It's meant for like let's say you're in the military and you're trying to organize like PT. That's what it's for. Like, yeah, meet here at 0600, let's go run and then let's start our PT, right? It's or like, hey, meeting to discuss whatever, like low level, not important stuff. It has never ever been meant to discuss strikes on this stuff. And this is the theory for me is that this is just a way to get around the Freedom of Information Act because if they went through official channels, all of that stuff is recorded, right? Like there's no way around it. But when
Mm.
you use Signal, right? And in fact, a matter of fact, a judge actually said that like no, like these Signal messages, if you're going to use Signal for these types of conversations, they have to be part of record. Okay, so that way, eventually, in 60 years, with the Freedom of Information Act, we'll be able to see how these decisions were made. But I wonder how the Supreme Court will rule on that. But yeah, this whole thing is just absurd. I mean, like you said, it's a national embarrassment. They were crap talking our allies. Like there was a
I
beef
know.
between JD Vance and the president. He was like, "Does the president not understand this is inconsistent with his messaging?" And then Stephen Miller says, "As the president clearly said." And I was like, "Oh God, they're like beefing it out in this group chat. This is hilarious."
Oh yeah. Well, but on that, on like you said about how they were trashing allies, JD Vance said something like, "Oh, I hate bailing out those European freeloaders," or something to that effect. And I'm like, who's more of a freeloader? Israel, but he
Duh.
can't bring himself to say it. It's like that one thing is so anathema. But it says so much about him. It says so much about the administration, and what can and can't be said. And it's like, what you're, what has Europe done to you, where you're gonna trash them, but we're in this mess because we're supporting Israel? It's just, oh my gosh, it's infuriating.
Yeah.
And what sucks is that JD Vance, relative to the others, seemed like the voice of freedom, voice of reason, and he sounded like an idiot. So,
Yeah, talk about the best of a bad bunch, you know what I mean? I
oh
mean,
yeah, oh yeah.
for God's sakes, none of it makes any sense. And I'll tell you what, the funniest part about this to me is that this strike, everyone knows, right? I mean, this is not at all going to stop the Houthis. I mean, they're basically in underground bunkers, like real, and I don't mean like Hamas underground bunkers. I mean like they are in real armored bunkers underground. Like these campaigns are going to take weeks. I mean, it's kind of like when the Biden administration they bombed them into oblivion.
Oh yeah.
And they asked Joe Biden, and partly because the guy has dementia, he accidentally committed candor, and they asked
Oh
him
yeah, I
this.
can recite this quote.
They
Are
said, "Oh, go ahead, go ahead."
are the strikes working? No. Will they continue? Yes.
Like it doesn't make any sense. But I guess that aside, I mean, I got to be honest with you. We are so lucky that there aren't dead like servicemen and servicewomen like pilots, because if this would have leaked in any way and gotten to the Houthis, like they have anti-air technology, and they would have known exactly when to look. They would probably know like semi-close where to look, you know? But
Hmm.
this is all crazy. And then the best part, this is the best part for me, Darren. The intelligence community testifies before Congress, right? And they basically say, and this is when the story just broke, right? So the story
Hmm.
just breaks. They're testifying before Congress, and the Democrats are just giving these people hell, you know? And they're just doing the classic, Wolf of Wall Street. I do not recall. I have no recollection. I do not recall. I mean, I'm going to play a clip here.
And so were the Vice President, the Secretaries of State and Defense, the National Security Advisor, and Ms. Gabbard, correct?
I believe so. I don't have a list of who was invited to be
And
on.
so was national political reporter Jeffrey Goldberg, correct?
I don't know that.
Yes, you do.
I don't know Jeffrey Goldberg, and I've already testified. I don't know whether or how he was added.
Okay, well, he was a member of the signal chain, and the discussion included the Vice President's private opinion on the wisdom of proposed U.S. strikes in Yemen, correct?
I don't recall.
Vance, quote, "I think we are making a mistake. I am not sure the President is aware of how inconsistent this is with his message on Europe right now. There was a strong argument for delaying this a month." You don't recall?
I don't. As you
You don't recall seeing that?
read that, I don't.
It included the private opinions of the Secretary of Defense on the timing of strikes in Yemen, correct?
I don't recall.
Director Radcliffe, surely you prepared for this hearing today. You were part of a group of principals senior echelons of the U.S. government in now a widely publicized breach of sensitive information. You don't recall whether the vice president opined on the wisdom of the strikes? That's your testimony today under oath?
In that setting, I don't recall.
Here's what Secretary Hegseth said, quote, waiting a few weeks or months does not fundamentally change the calculus. Two immediate risks on waiting. One, this leaks and we look indecisive. Two, Israel takes an action first or Gaza ceasefire falls apart and we don't get to start this on our own terms. Your testimony is you don't recall the Secretary of Defense sending that message or reading it?
I recall there being an exchange. I don't recall the specifics as you're reading it.
Well, let's put it this way, Director Ratcliffe, a discussion by senior U.S. officials on the timing and risks of a proposed military campaign and disagreements between the president and the vice president about U.S. plans and intentions would be of obvious interest to foreign intelligence services, would it not?
Yes.
And they were discussing the timing of sending U.S. air crews into enemy airspace where they faced an air defense threat, correct?
I'm going to, Senator, defer to the other principles that you're referring
Director
to
Ratcliffe.
about what the meaning and the context of
They're
what they
talking
were
about the
auditing.
timing of U.S. airstrikes, correct?
Yes.
Yes, and therefore the timing of sending U.S. air crews into hostile airspace, correct?
Yes.
And therefore the time period during which enemy air defenses could target U.S. air crews flying in enemy airspace, correct?
I don't know that.
You do know that.
They interrogated everybody.
Had a low blood sugar, thyroid thing.
It went on for months. It was a total fucking harassment.
Trying to proceed with the question.
But not a single Strattonite cracked.
Gladys Carrera?
Doesn't ring a bell.
Sorry, I have no recommendation of that.
No.
Jack
No.
Staff.
No idea.
I don't recall that transaction. Do you guys have any milk?
Absolutely not.
Yeah, basically they're just like, yeah, I don't recall. It's hilarious. It's like, Jesus. And they just lied. They just lied and lied. And then the story breaks, right? Like he just releases the full screenshot of everything because he got called a liar. And then they go to the House, where the House does the same thing, where they're like, so, about yesterday, what the fuck was that about, huh? You just lied? And then Tulsi Gabbard was like, well, about my testimony yesterday, I guess I was mistaken. Sorry. Like, what? They were totally just gonna try and get away with the lie. I was like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, how is that not perjury?
Oh, yeah, it's... I mean, it's so bad that it's just laughable. I mean, because there's no sophistication to it, you know? And I mean, speaking of the lack of sophistication, I mean, they're using, like, emojis. It just looks ridiculous. And it's such a funny, I mean, not really funny, but Yemeni civilians died in these strikes, and they're over here doing like muscle emojis and fire.
Oh yeah, the message that so they got a positive ID on the target, right? And they said he just walked into his girlfriend's building, and then they leveled the building. And then Mike Wall sends a fist bump, an American flag, and a fire emoji. And he's literally congratulating.
Oh, yeah, they were like, good job, everyone.
Good job, great
Good
job,
job,
everyone.
Hegseth.
Yeah, it doesn't. And then the part that gets it for me is when Pete Hegseth sent the text that says OPSEC, which is operational security, is a go, which means that there's no leaks. And he said that this is something out of, you ever seen the show Keystone Cops or Super Troopers, where it's just absurd cops doing crazy stuff? This is like this is a South Park episode, right? Like, this is unbelievable. You can't make this stuff up. And this is actually happening. So he tweets that OPSEC is clear in the group chat, where OPSEC is compromised by an anti-Trump administration journalist. I mean, you literally cannot make this up. This is unbelievable. And like you said, no one's gonna be fired. No one.
Now, I will say, on a more positive note, you know me, I've been detailing how I've been displeased with many aspects of the Trump administration thus far, I'm basically against the strikes on the Houthis because I think ultimately we could resolve this issue just by putting pressure on Israel, but and stopping the slaughter in Gaza. But I will say this is kind of what I was looking forward to for a second Trump presidency is just the ridiculous like really funny things that would happen because I mean this is really funny. I find it really funny, so I am enjoying it, and I think it is something to chuckle about, even though it makes us look so bad. I mean,
So
it is pretty funny.
I can't help but laugh about it because I mean, let me just make it like totally clear for the audience, right? So there's 18 people in this group chat, right? And they are discussing like when they're going to attack, the payloads of the weaponry they're going to use, the types of aircrafts they're going to be used, and like the maybe a potential delay, right? And here's the people. I don't want people to think that these are minor people within the administration. The Secretary of Defense is on there, the Vice President, a National Security Advisor, the Secretary of State, the Secretary of the Treasury, the Director of National Intelligence, White House Chief of Staff, CIA Director, Homeland Security Advisor, and the U.S. Envoy to the Middle East. So those are literally the top people in the fucking world on this issue, and they don't, not a one of them realized, not a single fucking one of them realized that there was a person that was not supposed to be in there. This is unbelievable. And then Mike Walls goes on Laura Ingram's show and basically says some outrageous nonsense about how he's never met the guy, and he's like, "Why would I put this loser in the group chat on purpose?"
Look, I take full responsibility. I built the group. My job is to make sure everything's coordinated.
But how did the
execute
number? I mean, I don't mean to be pedantic here, but how did the number?
Have you ever had somebody's contact that shows their name, and then you have somebody else's number there?
I never make those mistakes.
Right? You got somebody else's number on someone else's contact. So of course I didn't see this loser.
Well, you did. You did. Like, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, it is. And that Goldberg guy, he left the chat, because he was afraid that, he could face, punishment or that it was a national security risk. So he actually left the group chat of his own volition before anyone else. And it's funny. Do you think anyone noticed when he left or something? Surely I guess not. I guess not though. I guess nobody
noticed. Nobody noticed till the story. If they noticed or if they realized something was up, they would have had a much better messaging on this than what they had, because they were caught completely off guard, and you can just tell that from the testimonies people had. I mean, for God's sakes, Pete Hegseth walks off a plane and basically just says, "Yeah, let me be very clear. We were not discussing war plans. We were just discussing the war in Yemen that we were engaging in." Like, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I think the terminology was we weren't discussing war plans. We were discussing attack plans. Something like that. It was something like that. I'll have to.
Well, that's actually how they're getting out on this, and I'm gonna play a clip here really quick, which basically goes into like how the classified system works. I mean, this is worth a really good listen.
I can attest to the fact that there were no classified or intelligence equities that were included in that chat group at any time.
So you can see she's not really directly answering the question, right? She just keeps restating this idea that none of what was shared was classified. So something's going on here. And it comes down to a very technical distinction about what that word, classified, even means and who gets to decide at any given time.
It's a very small subset of senior government officials who can make classification decisions about whether something is or is not classified.
We all know from pick your favorite spy movie, or we can just read it directly from US law, that sensitive material can have 3 designations: top secret, secret, and confidential. These are classification levels based on how sensitive the information is. So if the CIA ever comes up to you and says, "Sorry, sir, this is classified information," what they're really saying is that the information has been classified into one of those 3 levels. But scroll down to the next section and we can see a very small group of people have what's called original classification authority, meaning they get to decide what's classified or not. And they are the president, the vice president, and agency heads, like, say, the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth.
So yes, Secretary Hegseth has original classification authority for any information being classified within the Department of Defense. And so he can decide it's classified. He can also decide it's not classified or no longer classified.
But the idea is basically that, listen, if you have classification authority, you can decide what's classified or not. So it can be up to Pete Hegseth, if he so chooses, to put this stuff in a chat and someone said, hey, you shouldn't have done that, that's classified. He can say, no, it's not classified. I'm the guy who gets to decide if it's classified or not.
So basically, they're going to get off on a technicality here. Is that like, because Pete Hegseth gets to decide what's classified and what's not classified. So as long as that's why they're getting away with all this and not getting, guilty of perjury, is because at the end of the day, Pete Hegseth has the final say on what is and what is not classified here. So worst case, they put a hand on a Bible and he sticks his right hand in the air. Like, he's just going to say, like, yeah, I never classified it. Even though it was disgusting. Like, here's the thing. If a serviceman would have leaked that, or if the press would have leaked that, it would be illegal. But because he leaked it, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's not illegal. And it's like, how, I don't, this is not consistent, but unfortunately it is a technicality. Does that make sense? Like, but it's still crazy. Basically, if this isn't classified, what is?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's just ridiculous, but
yeah, this is literally what I wanted out of this administration in terms of like an entertainment. Like, maybe not like something to this degree I never even dreamed of. I was thinking that we were going to get some funny press conferences. I never thought that we were going to get memes about the top people in government. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
How does this even make sense?
We're not even a full 3 months in. I mean, think about it like that. Isn't that crazy? We're not even a full 3 months in.
We're so spoiled. We're so spoiled. I mean, this is... do people defend this? I haven't seen many people defending this, but other than like the most like grifter like types who are just like, oh well, something about the Biden administration, like something ridiculous, like the Dave Rubin types, like they're just saying ridiculous stuff. But like, I don't know, have you seen anyone like credible defend any of this? Pretty much everyone I've seen is like even Laura Ingraham had to be like, okay, come on now, like give me a break.
I think I saw a clip of Greg Gutfeld playing defense. I was like, dude, really? But other than that, I don't think I've really seen anything. I mean, I'm sure Cat Turd probably had some system of apologetics to apply to this, but
right.
Barring that, I haven't seen any serious people defending this.
Yeah, this is just I don't know how to describe. I mean, I can only say absurd so many times, Darren. Like, and I'm sorry you have to hear that over and over again. But this whole thing, I mean,
well,
I just can't exactly. I can't even imagine that this is real. Like, when I saw this story break, I was like, there's no way. And I saw it literally like within like 30 seconds of it getting posted. Like, I just happened to be at the right place on the right time on X. And I was like, holy crap, there's no way this is real. And sure enough, it was. And I was like, and it just kept getting better and better because, like I said, they just lied. And then they brought out how it's a lie. And it just snowballs and snowballs. And then at the end of the day, nobody's getting fired. Nobody's getting nobody's losing security clearance. Like nobody's, they're still gonna use Signal. Like none of this makes any sense. Oh God.
Yeah, well, I mean, what can you say? I think I've probably said my piece about it. It's just, it is funny, but it's sad as well that this is, these are, supposed to be some of our best and brightest, and this is what we're getting. So,
Yeah, yeah, unfortunately. I mean, this is just exhibit on how incompetent this administration is. But yeah, I've said my piece as well, so
I guess Marine Le Pen, which is the further right candidate in the French elections that are going to be coming up in 2027, has now been barred from running because she's been found guilty of embezzlement. And, the charges to me seem. I think the charges mirror, the charges brought against Trump and the lead up to the 2024 election over here. I think I think there's a trend going on where we have these further right populist type leaders, and I guess you could call it the establishment kind of seemingly conspires to get rid of them through some legal means. Uh, but because honestly, I mean, much like the Trump cases, which I thought were a little silly, pedantic, perhaps, this one also seemed to be such a gotcha on a technicality. So Le Pen was like a member of the European Parliament from 2004 to 2017. And these charges are for the 2004 to 2016 period. And, I guess the allegations are, well, she's been convicted of it, but it is that the party used lawmaker assistants who were paid with European Parliament funds to perform tasks for her party, the National Rally, that were unrelated to EU official business. So basically, she used staffers for a function that was not their intended role. EU staffers, that is, and instead used it to, I guess, better her own party, but there was no personal enrichment going on. It's not like we're talking about, like $4 million or euros, I guess, over the course of, like 13 years, I guess, 12, 13 years. And to me, it's like, well, if these staffers had a salary of like 50,000 or something, we're talking, if you divvy it up 12, 13 years, it's like 300,000 a year or so of misappropriation. So we're like talking like what, 5 or 6 staffers getting like, doing business that they shouldn't have, you know, maybe they shouldn't do it, but I don't know if this quite rises to the level of barring the leading, you know, uh, candidate in their parliamentary system from running. That seems If anything, you would think that these establishment types over in Europe would know not to do this, because if anything, that only like
Emboldens
over
her.
here in America, that probably worked out in Trump's favor. So I think if anything, she might get a boost from this, or at least her party might. I don't know if she'll actually be able to run, but what are your thoughts on this in general?
Yeah, and I just want to be super clear with the audience. I've got a very surface level understanding of not just this story, but honestly, like European politics as a whole. I couldn't tell you all the different parties within each country. No way. But this woman, evidently, first of all, did you know that that crime that she is, I guess, convicted guilty of, it wasn't even illegal until 2016. So,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
so a year of it was so. But I mean, I just think that it's crazy. And to be fair, she is a pretty far right. Her party, if everything I've read has said that she's an anti-immigration party. Like that's really like their roots, their core is what they are. Which is crazy because the National Rally used to have like deep, deep anti-Semitic roots, right? But she's kind of pulled that from that to like pretty much at this point mainstream French politics, you know?
Oh yeah. I would describe her as more of a Trumpian type character now. Her father, Jean-Marie Le Pen, I believe was his name. He was the more further right one, and I think she disavowed him at one point, although she later said she regretted that. But she did distance herself from him. I believe she's more of a Zionist as well. I don't think she
Typically
has
how it
really.
goes, huh?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean it's really weird because like obviously Macron is termed out, right? So he can't run again in 27. So um this woman and this party as a whole, obviously with all these mass migrations into Western Europe, has really pushed this anti-immigration sentiment, right? And who knows? Maybe they realized they couldn't beat her, and so they're like, "Well, let's try and politically kill her on a technicality." Like is what it is. But I'll tell you this: they had to make that calculation if that's what they did, right? They knew that this was not going to be popular, right? If anything, this is going to embolden the National Rally Party, right? So whoever is going to be her replacement, right? And my understanding is that she already has one, right? It's a young guy, right? It's basically her protege, right? This
Yeah. There's speculation that maybe other figures could come, but yeah, that one guy, I I read his name and I've since
Jordan
forgot it.
Badella. Jordan
Yes,
Badella.
yeah,
Yeah.
something. Yeah,
Um yeah, I mean it's going to embolden him. So if you're right and this is like a witch hunt where they just happened to win, right? I mean, then they had to make that calculation thinking that either that Jordan Bardella guy is going to be not as bad, he's either going to be easier to work with, or he has less of a chance of winning, right? Which, who knows if that's any of that's accurate, right? If any of those calculations are accurate at all, right? Um, I mean, from everything I've read, this woman was literally like one of the front runners for this presidency,
oh
like
yeah. Her party was polling at, I believe, 37% recently is the figure I've been hearing. That 37 to 40% range. So that, I mean, that in a parliamentary system, that's
that's
quite a few.
ridiculous. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's unbelievable actually. Um
Oh yeah, to have a just I mean, I'm sure that that's a plurality because I don't know exactly how many, parties there are, but there are like 5 or 6, I think.
right.
I could be wrong, but
I have no idea. Don't get me lying to you, But um yeah, I mean in terms of like is this good? I mean from everything that I've seen too is that she's So like she can appeal this process, but it's gonna by the time the court likely takes it up in France, it's gonna be past the 2027 elections. So essentially, like this is gonna ban her, right? Like she doesn't like there really is no off ramp here for her, you know?
Yeah, that's the impression I got, that I don't think there's really any way she can get back into the race, but maybe her party performs exceptionally well because of this. Who knows? Uh, and, you know, it's funny because, something similar happened in Romania where the guy won in the election in December, but basically I don't know what it's called. I believe it was like the Romanian election authority or something. They overturned the election and then barred him from running in the in May, for his second chance. So it's just so anti-democratic. It's laughable. And I have a lot to criticize, like, people like JD Vance about, but just like how we were talking about in our last segment, he was like the only voice of reason, and he was criticizing the Europeans at that one conference, about a month ago, about what happened in Romania.
Mm-hmm.
And they would do well to listen, because this is just ridiculous. I mean, it's happening all over the Western world, where they're really just taking up these.
Well, to be fair, I mean you got to understand, right? Like I mean in Europe, they have a reason, and I mean a real reason to be hesitant of like any far right political movement in their, they haven't had a good history. And that's not even just saying the no fun party, right? You know what I'm saying? Like it's not the 1930s German no fun party. It's even if you exclude that one, right? Like Italy, the Britain fascist movement, like all of that is like pretty much hell, the National Rally's origins started as an offshoot from the 1930s no fun party, right? Like these are and I'm not saying that these people today are sympathetic or even agree with a lot of that stuff. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that like Europe as a whole, the elites, especially the establishment, like they are incredibly weary of any sort of like populist nationalist movement on the right because it just hasn't really worked out the best for everyone in the past. You know what I mean?
Oh, well, yeah, but I get that, but on the other hand, I think they need to break out of this, like, psychological prison that they are basically imposing upon themselves. I think just because bad things have happened in the past doesn't mean you have to forfeit your own country to foreigners.
Right, right, right.
Yeah.
What I was saying, I mean, it's not so much an argument. It's actually not even really an argument, right? It's more of just like that's just like an observation of like how they feel, you know?
Oh yeah,
Uh,
I know what you mean. Yeah, yeah, because I mean that's just how they are. That's how, especially Germany. I think Germany is probably the worst case of it. They're just so stricken with guilt that they can't. I mean, there are like limits on how far right or how far left you can be in that country. You can't be a radical at all.
yeah, and it's really weird too because like the centrist party is basically the one doing this, right? Well, it's not the centrist party, but you know what I mean. Like they're the ones orchestrating the French justice system and the Romanian justice system, right?
Hmm.
And they're supposed to be these champions of democracies, the great defenders of democracy. And then the second it's like, oh shit, we might not be able to win this next election. Well, I guess we got to just make them ineligible to be voted for. Then we can't lose to them. And it's like, yeah, well, this is backwards logic, right? Like you can't campaign yourself as the champions of democracy and then not respect the will of the people. You know what I mean? Like you can't only be for democracy when you win. That's not really it's not really how this is supposed to work. You know, at least the right will just be like, yeah, democracy sucks. We're a republic, you
Yeah.
know, like
Yeah, I will say, you know, they should really just give up the pretense and just be like centrist authoritarians, I guess, because you know, I would almost respect them more for it if they would just go all the way and say, "Hey, you know, these people are, like almost like national security threats, and we're just not going to let them win." Like that, you know, Romanian guy, that Kalin Georgescu. You know, he was pro-Russian basically, or relatively pro-Russian, and well, you know, is a that's kind of a big problem right now. So you know, you might not want a NATO country being so willing to play ball with Russia at this critical juncture. So I totally get it on one hand, but that I think if they're going to go down this route, they should just drop the pretense because people can't. I feel like the masses cannot abide hypocrisy, but if you do like tell them like, hey, we're just going to be like authoritarian, like, and that's just how it's going to be, I think they can stomach that better than they can stomach the contradiction. But
yeah, which is weird, right? Isn't that just
yeah.
completely crazy? Like it's sort of like they would like you to be like, "Hello, we're going to be openly authoritarian. How do you like that?" You know, like
Yeah. Yeah, it is a weird thing about human psychology, but I think people would be able to stomach it better if you just say it outright, as opposed to like dilly, not dilly dallying, but dancing around it, and having this facade of like liberality when in reality you don't want a free system. You want to maintain your own power, but
yeah, yeah, no, 100%. I mean, I just I can't believe that this is where we are. I think we're in for an interesting, like I think the West is having an identity crisis as a whole right now. And you feel free to chime in on what you think that means or if you agree, but I feel like the West is looking for a new, well, hell, a new era, right? Like they're trying to figure out what direction they want to go in politically, culturally, morally, like, and this is especially in the area for immigration. I think immigration is really the what cracked this egg. I mean, it happened here, it happened there. Um,
oh
I,
yeah, I really think it really does all come down to immigration because uh you know which it ultimately comes down to race as well. I mean, people just the people in the West are feeling like they're being replaced, and in some states that's, I guess, more so the case than others. Uh, but there's just going to be such a backlash to it, and there has been already. And I think the more it gets repressed, the more it's just going to like fester. I think honestly it could be. I mean, with the trends we're seeing now, I mean, I don't think it's crazy to say like democracies as we have known it will not exist in the same way in like 30 years time. I think we could see dramatically different systems all across the Western world.
yeah, I don't disagree. I feel like I mean, we're definitely moving more autocratic. You know what I mean? Like it's just kind of the way that we're going. But I don't know that it's like a for sure thing. I think eventually we'll snap back, but who knows? I mean, like the the Romans and the Greeks tried it, right? And then we went 1,000 years. And everyone was like, "Can you believe we used to let everyone vote? Isn't that just ridiculous?" I mean, that is totally possible, right? Maybe we'll get to an era where it's like, yeah, only we the powerful, we the rich are gonna rule. We'll be in a techno feudalism, right? As Steve Bannon
Oh
says,
yeah.
techno feudalism.
Have the Elon Musks running us.
Yeah, I
But
do. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
oh, well, just back to that other point. I do think though that there is a way to save democracy. I think, these liberal governments, they just need to totally clamp down on immigration and then remigrate a lot of these recent arrivals. I think that would probably cool. Like, I think it really just all stems from that, honestly. And some of it is like the cultural stuff as well, like the increased liberality, the secularization. But I think that's a relatively small part of it. I think most people are basically happy to be fairly liberal, but when people feel like their own existence is under threat, they're just not going to, be willing to. They're not going to be in favor of what the ruling party if they feel like they're being replaced. So I think if these liberal democracies can just clamp down on that, then they could probably restore their standing. I don't know if they have the will to, or if
Hmm.
they can, but that to me, just bird's eye view, I think that would solve all the problems right there. But
Yeah. Now I will say too, just about this whole thing. I mean, if these are like real embezzlement charges, like, I mean, you also can't have a criminal, right? Like, you can't have a criminal. Or do you see this as like purely like politically trumped up in nature?
well, it's one of those things. It's like with the Trump case, like Trump cases. You could say, according to the letter of the law, he was probably guilty on most, if not all, of the things. Of the four main things. But the problem is that if you're going to go down this route where where it's like all these charges they come off as like technicalities and as like unserious, they come off as just totally political because of that. I think more damage is done by pursuing these legal lines of attack than like than like some minor corruption going on, because ultimately I don't see this as being like a really, from what they've described, I don't see this as being a very big deal. Maybe she shouldn't have, she probably shouldn't have done it, but for these are wealthy governments. 4 million over the span of over 10 years. I mean, to us it'd be a lot. To any individual person, that's a lot of money. But in the grand scheme of things, that's really just not that much money. And the consequences of this intangible like consequence of like barring the leading candidate in these elections from running is just so much greater than $4 million over the span of 13 years. Like it just pales in comparison. So I just think it's just silly to get. Yeah, I mean, you're just doing damage to people's faith in democracy when you do this. So
Yeah, that's
according
really
to the
my
letter,
concern. That's
yeah.
really my concern is it's kind of hard to think because like, people when they think of like free speech, they're like, okay, that's important. And freedom of okay, well that's important, right? But when they think of democracy, there's like this ever declining view that like it's really kind of overrated. And it's easy to have that feeling now when we have it. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like when democracy's not here, right, your entire voice, because then all your freedoms go away because you're basically democracy is a mechanism for everyday people to make sure that they have rights protected by the government. Because if you don't have a democracy, then basically you're just at the whim of whatever autocrat you elect or whatever nobility is around you. Like You know, and some people would still argue that yeah, that's what makes it awesome, but like obviously most people don't believe that, you know? But they just don't understand it. They just think that like, oh, you know, like I just want my guy to be in power forever, you know? Like
Oh yeah, yeah. Most people don't take a more principled stand, I suppose.
right.
Speaking of principled stand, and you were talking about you they want their guy in for as long as possible. What do you think about? I'm going to throw this out there as kind of like a third topic because I think we've basically covered the Le Pen thing.
Sure.
What do you think about Trump's musings about going for a third term? Do you think how serious do you think that is?
Dude, for God's sakes, let's make it to the midterms first. Okay? Like let's not we are 3 months in, Darren. We cannot be having this fucking conversation right now. I mean, it's pretty clear. Okay, the Constitution's pretty clear. You can't do it. It's not possible. There's no loophole where like JD Vance runs as president and Trump's his vice president. And then once they win, he just resigns and Trump. You know that's not possible, right?
Oh, well, I think the Constitution is clear. It's just, does he have the audacity to try it? And, I
Test
think,
it.
yeah, I think there's like a coin flip chance he tries it. I don't know.
I mean, listen, at this point, I mean, after January 6th, I'm not going to put anything past this guy, you know? I mean, he's literally the true political wild card, you know?
Oh, yeah.
But I am not. I mean, listen, we can talk about it if you want, but I got to be honest with you. I am so unbelievably disinterested in this because I mean, listen, dude, let's just make it to the midterms first. That should be everyone should be thinking about that for right now. Democrats who are, clutching their pearls and going, he has the audacity to talk to us like this. He's gonna go for a third term. He's never gonna leave. You guys are idiots. All right, you guys are literally taking the bait. Because if Trump had a choice between you talking about Signalgate or the Houthi strikes or potentially war with Iran and him running for a third term, I mean, CNN in prime time right now is literally talking about this same shit instead of actual stuff that actually matters. Like, give me a break. Give me a fucking break here, right? Like,
Well, you make a good point. Maybe he started talking about it more to distract from Signalgate. Actually, that I hadn't thought about that, but I think that is plausible.
no, he's good at it, dude.
Oh yeah, yeah.
He's really good at that.
He understands the media, so yeah. You make a good point. Actually, I hadn't thought about that, but I'm thinking that might be what he is doing because I mean, like you said, we're only 3 months in. It's a little early to be talking about these things, but I'm such an NPC. I guess I was complete. Without thought, I was completely captured by the news cycle. I was like, we have to discuss this.
No, I'm just saying that we can. I'm just saying that, like, I don't know, man. I don't even think he's that authentic about it. I mean, like, let's see. In 3 years, whenever they start the campaign process, like, we will find out very quickly if he's serious.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the more I think of it, as I talk, I'm like, well, I actually think I kind of subscribe to your theory now, that he's just doing it as a distraction because I think, this last campaign, by the end of it, he seemed pretty tired. I don't think he wants to go through the heck of a campaign again. I think after this one, he'll be done. He'll probably just want to golf the rest of his days.
Yeah, he'll hopefully just ride off into the sunset and he'll just campaign for whatever Republican kisses the ring, like I think that he'll do more. Let's say JD Vance wins the nomination or whoever, right? I think Trump is going to spend more time campaigning and doing rallies than they will, because his blessing means more than they could ever hope, you know?
Oh yeah, yeah. I think he'd enjoy a rally without the pressure too. I think he likes just being in the spotlight. So I could see him being an important figure until he dies. But
Yeah, I
yeah.
mean, he hard to be more important than he is right now, just culturally, politically. I mean, this dude is literally plutonium for the Western world. Like, he's such a changing element. It's nuts. It can't be belittled his influence in American politics and the West, you know?
Oh yeah, isn't it crazy how like if you think about it, for the last decade, Trump has been the most famous man to live. Like like on this entire earth, there is no one more famous than Trump
You know, I
these
was
last 10 years.
I was 100% thinking about that today. I was like, if you showed a picture of a random person, it's like you go up to a stranger on the sidewalk in the middle of Manhattan, you show them a picture of, say, Drake, and you show them a picture of Trump, 100% of people will be able to tell you, oh, that's Donald Trump, this president.
Oh
You know,
yeah.
you
Well, I'll
you
take it a step further. You go to the streets of Somalia and you show them a picture of Trump, they know who it is. I mean, we're the world's superpower, and he's the most news making guy ever. So I think everybody knows. There's probably not a person in the world who isn't fully aware of him.
Yeah, the Sentinelese are so lucky.
Oh yeah,
They're so
yeah,
lucky. They have
those
no
guys.
idea.
Yeah, those guys have no idea. But barring them, it is crazy. Just, I mean,
If he were to run again, do you think he'd win? Or do you think he'd have a good chance of winning?
oh gosh, I
I know
actually
it's super early to say, but I was
I
just
think
curious.
people will be sick of him by then. I'm already getting sick of this presidency. Even though Signalgate was really funny, I'm getting sick of it. So, uh,
See, it
I
was
think
funny, and I find it funny to people who acknowledge the absurdity of it. Like, we can laugh at it, but like I've had to talk to a few people who've tried to defend it, and I'm like, it just makes me infuriated because it's funny to laugh when we all admit that it's absurd and this is crazy and stupid, right? But then
yeah,
like someone unironically says, "Well, did you know it was already installed on their computers and phones?" And I'm like, "Ah, you're an idiot." God, how do how do I explain this? Um, but yeah, no, I agree.
I wonder what broadcaster they listen to that they get these talking points from.
It was Jesse Waters, the
Oh,
Fox
okay,
primetime
okay,
guy. Yeah, because he
okay, that makes
he
sense.
he basically explained it. You got to keep in mind his audience is like 90 years old, so he basically explained it like, yeah, you ever accidentally, had a boys group chat and added your wife, like that type of nonsense. He's like, well, that kind of happened at the highest levels of military, and I'm like, well, um, that's a ridiculous way to spin this, because
That is funny though.
it'd
Yeah,
be like,
is there anyone more who is more sycophantic, or at least willing to play ball than Jesse Waters, of the commentariat class? I don't know who.
maybe Hannity.
Okay, okay, yeah, yeah, maybe. But
You know,
Dan Bongino, Dan or
for sure.
Bongino,
Yeah, Dan
yeah.
Bongino. Yep, for sure. I thought you were talking about like explicitly like Fox guys.
Oh, anyone.
Oh God, that's a tough one then. The most will defend anything type of people.
Yeah,
Um,
because Bongino's definitely up there, but barring those three, though, I mean, I think at least other pundits will be able to have mild, very very mild criticisms at least.
Dave Rubin is also shockingly up there. I mean, I don't know if he's getting some Russian kickback still that we don't know about, but he definitely he just won't. He won't criticize anything about about Trump. There's a
That's
couple.
funny.
There's a couple.